Welcome back to the Podcaster Show. This is King of Podcasts here with you. Appreciate all of you joining us, finding the program as you always do, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, YouTube itself, Amazon Music, and all other platforms. Thank you for getting time to go and join us here. And tweaking, testing, tuning, trying to get the right content out. You know, it's one thing to do short and long form content. We know it's much more common now than ever that, you know, in television news, you always had the tease to a story you wanted to make sure somebody would watch later on, or a promo for a TV series, or a trailer for a movie. We've always had short form content to be the gateway, the appetizer to somebody taking on the full course, right? And just like people at a restaurant, sometimes you don't want a full course, you just want an appetizer to go with your drink, your beverage, your tasty spirit that you have in hand. So if you decide to do that, that's your choice. But you can always make sure somebody will catch your content. If there's one common thing that you adhere to, is that every minute of your content has to count. You need to make sure that you are entertaining, informing, doing something with your content. You don't need to go and fill a time slot, especially when you're a podcast, just to fill a time slot. Obviously, on TV shows now that are streaming or movies that are out there in theaters or streaming, there's a set time that you have to put in. And for movies that want to go and take time and edit down their program to make sure they're putting just the right amount of content on, how often do you see a series that will have an episode and the time of the episode will be different than the next episode? Because you're finding a proper place in the story to stop the story to begin the next chapter of the story. When you're doing real-time content or doing timely content, you know, like I do, the thing is, besides the fact of what content you're going to deliver, you have to make sure that if you're going to have somebody listen to your program, you want to get the listeners to go to the longer form content, to the full actual program. You want them to want to binge watch your program, binge listen to your program. That's what you want. And so there's a story that comes out right off the bat. And this is something that they talk about the risk of short form video. This is from a Bloomberg newsletter story. So Kara Swisher, the co-host of Pivot, she was speaking with her guest co-host, Tim Miller of The Bulwark, about his podcast at The Bulwark. And she admits that she doesn't regularly consume the show on a podcast app. Quote, you know where I listen to it? I listen to it on social media. I listen to pieces and pieces. And then the writer here says that they had a similar realization about their own viewing habits or listening habits. Scrolling on TikTok, came across a clip from a podcast. Didn't want to name the show, but the interview topic were something they were interested in, and they watched. Took down the headline where the item that the clip was built around, swiped away without hearing the entire episode or even the rest of that segment. The clip's morsel of information was enough for me. This story goes on to say that as podcasters have rushed into video, part of the problem is that the powerful algorithms behind TikTok, Instagram, and even YouTube Shorts can improve discovery and rope in new audience members. But many podcasters are even paying armies of video-savvy marketers, known as clippers, to saturate social media with enticing snippets of their shows, engineered into irresistible buzzy tidbits designed to grab your attention. And I'm going to take from a story from the Wall Street Journal that goes into that recently published on that, as they referred to. The question is, how effective was the ubiquitous short-form videos at driving an audience to a full-length podcast? They talked to the co-founder at Bumper, a podcast audience development company. Quote, it's nowhere near as impactful as people want. Quote, the disappointment that I have seen from creators often stems from a lack of clarity around what clips are in service of. If hosts expect the clips to pick up vast numbers of new audience members for their full-length show, that likely won't happen. Think about the amount of friction that exists between seeing a clip and then consuming it elsewhere, especially when you are scrolling rather than listening to a podcast or in the mood to listen to. They go on to say that I used to think a clip on social was marketing collateral for a full episode. A trailer for the movie isn't a movie. Increasingly, my mind is changing about that. There's a tremendous amount of attention that comes in little slices. Now, they spoke to someone for the Bulwark about their clips, saying that short-form video content has become a significant driver of our growth, and it helps drive the conversation and get people in front of our new audiences across all platforms. A significant driver of subscription growth. A spokesperson didn't say whether who watches the clips definitely convert to full-time listeners, but they said they racked up 132.5 million views on X over the past 3 months, and on YouTube Shorts, 38.7 million, and on TikTok, 10.3 million views. This Bloomberg article goes on to talk about that the audiences for both formats appear to be diverging. Depending on how the industry shakes out, that could end up being a totally fine thing for the business. And Miser, this gentleman from Bumper, goes on to say that effective podcasters often don't mind if their clips fail to convert because they make money off their social media accounts by selling ad packages that span both products. But a downside of heavy clipping is that it also disrupts the primary source of the podcast's revenue, the full-length episodes of shows, and the substantial ad inventories they deliver to listeners. The current dynamic of podcasting in some ways is reminiscent of what we've seen in late-night TV. No shortage of funny, provocative clips highlighting juicy on-air moments. But despite the constant reminder of how entertaining these shows can be, when was the last time you sat down and watched an entire episode as it aired? Aggressively publishing highlight clips has been undoubtedly a great way to keep the performers alive in the cultural zeitgeist, but over time, it's also effectively taught us that you don't have to no longer actively seek out the shows to get their best moments. Because the same thing we have in the podcasting. Okay. In my opinion, the short form content should not be of your best content. What you should do, and this is what I do myself, in my content, I usually try to find something that is going to be something that I will say on a monologue or take a particular clip and plan for it to be in social media. I'm not going to just pick some random clip that will just satisfy a short form. I actually kind of plan on it. So when I do these kind of episodes, there will be a spot where I'll know, okay, I'm going to say this here because I'm going to make my point. I'm going to give my take. It'll be within the time frame that I need. 90 seconds is about as much as I need to go because I'm trying to adhere to all the different platforms. Of course, you can go longer, but I think 2 minutes is too long. It's about as more than you need. 2 minutes is stretching it. 60 to 90 seconds. 30 seconds, if you can get it and you can get the full-throated take that you want to make, sure. But 60 to 90 seconds. And also, I don't take the full clip sometimes as it's recorded. Sometimes I will splice together because it's audio. And more importantly, I don't care to do video because the talking head doesn't make a difference to anybody else anyway. Unless I had accompanying B-roll video to go with it. But if you see any of my clips out there, I'm not that big of an audience anyway. Sometimes I might get a good audience on something that I might say that will grab attention. If I get the right caption out there, it works. But whatever content I do, it's just my own. I want to make sure that if somebody's going to go and look at the clip, the most important thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I'm promoting my platform. So one website, one URL, kingofpodcasts.com. YouTube at King of Podcasts, so they can find the video version of the show. That's it. And even the video version is Slate, because I'm not doing anything more than just creating a visual slate with captions. That's all I'm going to go and do to create something that's going to be a visual medium that will be good enough for somebody to watch, which they're not going to watch. They're just going to put it on YouTube and listen to it. And sometimes it happens to work really well. But I mean, I make it pretty easy to go ahead and clip up my shows. I basically will do 2 clips per episode, about as much as I need. Sometimes if it's less than 30 minutes, I'll do 1 clip. But I don't need to do anything more than that. Because if I do that there, I'll have the clips I want to do. There's a whole lot of content I'm going to be covering. But it doesn't also matter where I pull from the episode either. Because I also want to make it where it's not something always from the beginning. I want it to be somewhere to the middle to the end. But I'll plan on what I'm going to basically say. If I catch myself at a point where I said this, and I kind of make a note of it mentally, I'm going to come back and pull that clip and put it into a format that I can put out there for social media. Because the other thing is that short form content, you might get a lot of attention to it. The most possible attention you'll probably get to a clip or to your content. But it's also the fact is that I want to make sure I have captions in there so people can just go and catch the words. At least they'll catch that, because if they're watching on their phone or tablet or whatever they're going to be listening on or watching on, they might not have their full attention to it. And they might be in a loud place. So you want to make sure that they have multiple ways to consume what you're saying, or they can read what you're saying. That's more important to me than anything else in a short form clip. But for me to say, it's tough on the content you make. Now, when you're doing interviews, some people have learned to go Joe Rogan style and just pick a long interview to go with and just pick something that's going to work out of that particular interview that you want to take. But some people will probably get the impression that they're getting the best clip possible. So why even go ahead and go back to the show? Because for some of these shows, a show like The Bulwark, without any political animus or anything like that at all, I'm just saying objectively, The Bulwark is going to talk about whatever news events that are going on or whatever political stories that everybody else is talking about. Remember that. A political show that is talking about the same thing that plenty of other political podcasts are talking about right now. So when you got that, the difference is, what is your voice saying about it? Once you report the story, what is your opinion, your editorial? And that's what you have to figure out. And that might just be the only thing worth listening to on that particular episode. So when Kara Swisher says that, she's saying the fact that Tim Miller and Kara Swisher probably have the same kind of political mindset. They both have parallel views on what they think about politically. So it's not a matter of going back to the episode to hear the whole thing, especially if they're both busy and don't have time. But the clip satisfies, because Kara Swisher got to hear Tim Miller make his point, and that's it. And there's plenty of times where somebody will, it's not even the fact that if it's somebody from the show that clips the episode. The one thing that happens more than anything on X is there are people that are media watchdogs out there, whether they are official organizations that are media watchdogs or just people out there that just clip up content that's not theirs, but they're using the right to go ahead and put that content up there so people can catch it. So I don't have to go listen to a whole episode. I can't tell you how many times somebody has already put out a clip from the Breakfast Club or from, whatever cable channel or, any streamer like an iShowSpeed or Drewski. You see it. I'm not going to go back and go find this long form video. I could go find an iShowSpeed channel or Drewski channel or, Neon or whatever else. I could go look for all these different streamers and all, or live streaming or whatever there is. I could go look for it, but it's also the convenience of where you're going to find that content. The one thing I think that most of these clips don't have, especially if these are people that are doing their own program, you're going to assume that they know where to find your show. And it doesn't mean you put a little end cap on the episode or that particular short form clip and say, okay, catch it here. No, you want that burned in to the whole clip. I don't think people realize that. For me, that was the most important thing I started doing 2 years ago when I started doing clips. Because I knew the first thing I had to do off the bat was I got to promote the website first and foremost. Once I did that, and then I started promoting the YouTube feed. Once I started promoting the YouTube feed on every audio clip, any audiogram that I do, it got me subscribers. It was the best way to get subscribers. Because somehow they've caught that video, that audiogram, and then they catch it. It's like, all right, here we go. And then I go ahead and push it over to social media. Then my channels get some traction, some traffic. So I'm not worried about monetizing these particular platforms because on my YouTube feed, I don't have it monetized yet. The bar's a little too high for me to get there. I got the subscriber count. I don't have the watch hours. So for me, I have to work on getting my content to be to where they're talking about here. You get the real money on the YouTube feed if you put on content that is long form and you get a TSL, a time spent listening measurement that goes well enough to bring your watch hours to a certain minimum. And then you go ahead and be able to monetize it, which is where I'm at right now. So that's my important things. Now, when it comes to the short form content, I also have to keep in mind that on social media, I'm not expecting to go ahead and pull people out of nowhere to go and catch my For You page, whether it's X or TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever, and they're going to catch the feed. Like Spotify, they're good about their algorithm to say, okay, the algorithm is going to help you with that short form content to help you find an audience. That's fine. But I don't think it's always the biggest driver of that either. Because I know for myself, there's not a lot of stuff I put out there myself that goes viral on TikTok or LinkedIn or X. What I get the most viral is, some of the YouTube shorts gets it, but what I've gotten viral are YouTube videos, which is on my longer form content. And some of my content I did out there was like the 10, 15 minute variety when I was doing when I'm not podcasting. And some of those videos actually did pretty good. But now on some of the other programming, it's a half hour, 60-minute show. And I'm getting some shows where I'll get somebody to go and listen in. Listeners will go and stick around for like 10, 15 minutes. The biggest thing is to be able to measure what the time spent listening is on your podcast. It's very important to go and follow that. It's one of the metrics that I miss when Stitcher used to be around. Stitcher used to give us that stat of the length of how long somebody would listen to a podcast. I believe Apple did that as well, but I don't think they have that anymore. And I missed that part because that was something that was really, really good. And if I had that still, I would still go ahead and find my way to go and get around. But we don't have that anymore. So it's unfortunate we don't have that. And Spotify doesn't give me that either. I wish it did. So for instance, I'm looking right now on my Apple Podcast Connect section for stats. Let's just say that's like broadcasters podcast. Here's a good example. All right. I'm up followers 3%. My listener count is up 48%. That's good. My plays are up 48%. They give me the time listening and it's 12 hours listen. It's not that much. Really, it's not. And then I have of my listeners that a certain amount are following and a certain amount are not following. And if I go into the episodes themselves, it'll show me the average consumption and they only give me percentages. So like certain episodes, I'll get 65%, 32%, and some of the others, I don't get much of anything else. So I get to see that part, which doesn't give me much to work off of. If I go to my series, Depraved and Debaucherous, numbers are up on there. 21% up on followers, 12% up on listeners, 21% up on plays. Great. Time listened, it's a little bit better. And I get a lot more people that are not following my program that are listening longer, which is interesting. And if I look at some of the episodes that I do now, some of them do better, where I get 83% of average consumption of an episode, which is nice. 22%, 29%, 60%. That's great. But for me, what I'm learning about is that I need to find a way to find the right content. And it's also the part where, like, when you're trying to create content, it's difficult to go and not get put into a hole of doing the same stuff over and over. Because that's the other part that people can try to do themselves as well, is micro broadcast what they're doing. So on the same one topic, which gets run to the ground, because people really got into it, and that's what the metrics say to go and follow along, and then you try to do what you can do. So I can't do it though so much. That's just not something that's sustainable. The problem is that these analytics I get when I look at also my Spotify feed it's like Netflix numbers, watch hours. That doesn't really say anything to me at all. But the content itself, I try to get myself in a way where I have a rotation of topics I go into regularly. And then when I do those, that's usually what gives me a better sense of like what people are going to listen to on a regular basis. So I have to figure that out in some good way, shape, or form to go and do that. To close out the story from the podcasting end of Bloomberg here, they said that podcasts continue to rely on their in-show ads to justify their big paydays from networks. The risk for podcasting is ending up in a world where valuable long-form audiences have been supplanted by short-form clip cruisers. And it feels like it can become particularly troublesome if podcast networks or creators can effectively figure out how to sell ads on social media or be constrained because of their editorial policies. So this person might not have an answer to this, but I do. You need to take what radio does. Radio, we're worried about time spent listening, TSL. The thing is, time spent listening more than ever now because of the personal people meter system right now that Arbitron has. They count the fact that their rating system is based on somebody listens at least to a program or something on the radio station for 3 minutes at a time, if they count 3 minutes. It used to be where there was quarter hour ratings where you'd worry about, okay, who was listening in the 15-minute span? And that's the part where time spent listening, you had to have somebody listen to at least a quarter of the hour of programming to count that rating. That's what has to happen here, is that you have to be careful about making a show that is interesting and compelling to keep people watching from beginning to end. Or at least catch the show for a long time, as long as you can get, until people have to go and just go because they can't go and consume the whole show. The most important thing is, I don't think it's right or good to present a podcast or any kind of content for that matter that you can't watch or listen to in one sitting. Audiobooks is a different story. Magazines, newspapers, different story. TV shows and movies, you should be able to watch them in one sitting. At least you should be able to go and watch an episode of a movie, or you should be able to watch a full movie or an episode of a TV show in one sitting. And you make sure that what you're putting in that content is going to be good. That's what you have to do. Now, the one thing that's happening now for some people that are talking about the clippers that are out there that are making money on this. And trust me, you go to your LinkedIn, if you look at LinkedIn jobs or Indeed or wherever else, there are so many jobs for social media content producers that are remote. If you get the right kind of video, content you make out there and you got the equipment, yeah, you could go and do a lot of stuff with it. You know how to use CapCut, you know how to use DaVinci or whatever else out there. Yeah, go for it. They talked to one person here that has been quit his finance job, now runs a team of 8 clippers and earns between $20,000 to $30,000 a month on short form video clips to go on sites like Instagram and TikTok. So clipping took off during the early days of TikTok. When you see chopped up snippets of personalities like Andrew Tate or Mr. Beast racking up millions of views. So anything can be clipped. The podcast, debate, social media montage, movies, and startups are out there that will be able to go and do that for you. So one particular one they have that they talk about here is Cluely, an AI note-taking startup, hiring clippers to plaster its promotional content across the internet. And their clip content generates between 800,000 views a day on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. And in the virtual markets, brands post the rate they will pay. Freelancers will sign up to make clips. And these clippers are able to get paid anywhere between 50 cents to $2,000 per views, or $2 per 1,000 views, to motivate them to find the most shareable moments. They talked to somebody that runs a marketplace called Clip Through a Discord channel, where they launched a TikTok campaign clipping scenes from the FX show Adults, streaming on Hulu, and that it drew more than 12 million views. On TikTok, videos are recommended to viewers based on how much people interact with them through likes, comments, shares, and watch time. So a well-edited clip can go viral even from an account with no followers, and each one can be made in under a minute using free online editing tools. It is all fascinating when you look at it, and you say to yourself, to create the right content, in the podcasting realm specifically, you have to keep an eye on the fact that you might hear the popularity of Joe Rogan or any of the NPR content or Theo Vaughn or all these others, right? But they got to also have the right guest. And not every guest is going to go ahead and get you the right amount of, audience is going to come out for it. Unless you're just completely like caught on the fact that, who are they talking to this time? But I'm not the kind of person that can catch long form content like that, especially like an hour, 2 hours like that. I mean, remember, after COVID, we don't have a lot of people that are doing long commutes. You might have people that are taking plane rides and have the time all the time they want to go and catch some content. That's a different story too. But you don't want to make your podcast or your video show become like an audiobook where you have to keep going back to it. Unless you make your show episodic and you have like a long form interview or something else that you have, and then you just basically say, okay, well, we're going to go and keep this here and we're going to create parts of it. And you find a right way to go and do that. I mean, even for me, the Broadcasters podcast, when I first started doing, or Creative Not Corporate, the interviews I used to go and put up, I used to put them in the show and I would just put it in two parts. But, you could do that. But the thing is, I would do it where it would have like a break, which would be a good place to go and stop the interview. But now I don't do it anymore because if I do interviews, now I just put them out there standalone. Because there's no rhymes or reason as to what to do with the content. I'll tell you like this too. What I also do, especially from a wrestling program, I do a thing now where there are some weeks I do three episodes in a week. I did that this week, where between Wednesday and then I did a show episode on Friday, I did another episode on Sunday. There was just extra news going on and things that I wanted to go and talk about on the program. And I'm saying to myself, I'm not going to wait another week to go and talk about it. And I'm not going to make my show go like super long to try to cram it all in. With podcasts, we can kind of do what we want with it. So if we have an agenda, you have like what you have planned out to go and talk about in your program. And you think, well, maybe we can get all of it in. Then find a way to go ahead and create another episode that adds the extra content. Or put it aside towards premium content like some other people do. I just think you can do something where the long form content should absolutely be full of what people want to listen to all the way across. You should not have any filler at all. Nothing. Like every bite of a full course meal should be delicious. Shouldn't have a bad bite. And if you're going to do an appetizer, make sure the appetizer is good and leaves you wanting more because you're still hungry. With the appetizer, it's like, look, your content in the long form should have a billion different clips you could pull from. That should be the easiest thing for you to do. To create short form content, your long form content should have plenty of spots for you to go ahead and pull and clip and clip and clip. But you only need to do a couple. Keep it 60 to 90 seconds, and that's it. Because you want people to take that short form content and attract them to take the bigger bite, to take the bigger full course meal that is your long form podcast, where you're taking the listeners into account their time, their interest, and their attention span. Folks, we really appreciate you listening to another Podcasters Row. And again, anybody you feel like we should have on the program, reach out to me, email me, kingofpodcasts@yahoo.com, or just go direct to the contact page at kingofpodcasts.com. We'll talk to you next time.